In the dangerous waters near the South China Sea,
Come on, guys, help us!
2 American submarines vanished during the Second World War.
You might want to take a look at this. Clearly is a shipwreck.
Guided by a survivor's tale
We hit the mine. The submarine flyer was lost.
and a deathbed revelation,
We had people report different shipwreck sites if somebody came up with a sketch.
father and son diver explorers Mike and Warren Fletcher scour the depths,
That looks awfully like a submarine.
searching for the wreckage of the lost submarines. The South China Sea. Modern-day pirates make these waters among the most treacherous in the world. But 65 years ago, the threat was much greater. World War II was playing out in the Pacific. In 1944, 2 U.S. submarines hunting Japanese convoys disappeared here, less than a month apart. The USS Robolo and the USS Flyer. Each sub was 95 meters long, with over 80 sailors on board. Both miraculously had survivors, but the wrecks have yet to be found. Now, Mike and Warren Fletcher want to find the submarines and discover why they sank.
It's always a bit of a scramble to get on board, get all the gear set up, and make sure everything arrived and everything's working.
Whenever you set out on an expedition like this, if you don't prepare for the unexpected, you're going to be disappointed. When we finally get our chance to dive, we have to be prepared to dive in extreme deep conditions.
The investigation begins here in the Balabac Strait in the Philippines, near the last known locations for the submarines. The search will cover more than 250 square kilometers, including towering underwater cliffs that drop to depths of 200 meters.
Both the Robolo and the Flyer were supposed to go through this route because it's deep water and it's very difficult to put mines in deep water. And if they were on the route that they were supposed to be, there's no way that they should have been up there.
Official records of the Robolo's last position are inconsistent. 4 men are believed to have survived the sinking, but none made it home to tell their story. It was different for the Flyer. 15 men made it off the submarine, but 8 survived the swim to shore. The search team also includes Steve Jacobson. Steve's father, Al, was the last surviving member of the Flyer crew. Al had a lifelong obsession with discovering the precise cause of the sinking and finding the Flyer's final resting place.
I think that is Bayan. This is Gabon.
Steve brings his dad's taped memoirs and the Navy's official investigation report to help locate the Flyer.
I'm not a diver, and I know very little about diving, and it's quite dangerous down there, so it's exciting.
Steve has a passion for understanding this story, and he really wants to see the submarine found.
On the night of Sunday, August the 13th, 1944, Steve Jacobson's dad was on watch duty on the aft deck of the USS Flyer.
We went to battle stations. We went to what we call semi-submerged. In other words, there were just a little of the submarine. The conning tower and the deck was just out of water.
An explosion rocked his sub.
You didn't have any time to think or question what happened. I mean, it wasn't a case of, I got to think about what happened or what I'm going to do about it because you were swimming. I mean, you can't imagine.
71 men lost their lives. Al Jacobson was blown clear, ending up in the water along with 14 others.
The boat was going right straight down. The only thing I could think of it is that propellers coming around. Okay, so I swam to the surface as fast as I could because I could just see those big propellers just coming by.
He spent 18 hours in the water before he reached land. Al died in 2008, not long after he taped these memoirs.
He very much wanted this story to be told. He was trying to find a way to get the story told.
The Fletchers call on a global network of contacts to help trace the submarines. One of them is Marlon Acosta, a Filipino diver. Marlin has found a local fisherman, Toto Usasi, who has information for the team. Toto has spent years working these waters and has spotted mysterious wreckage 30 meters below the surface. He believes it could be a submarine.
A lot of great shipwrecks have been found by fishermen. I trust fishermen. I really rely a lot and have in the past on their insights and their knowledge about the sea. So I'm anxious to see what it is they've found.
Toto fishes using a technique known as hookah diving. He takes his air from an everyday plastic hose attached to the kind of compressor the Fletchers would have on their farm tractor. The team's dive coordinator, Frank Doyle, has tried hookah diving himself.
Right, this guy is a bit more professional than most. He's got a mask. Normally you see the guys that have got a pair of wooden goggles with a little strap and some nylon holding them together.
Really, even their goggles are homemade.
Yep.
Their flippers are homemade too.
Yeah. It looks like he's
a piece of plywood.
gone for some plastic, this guy, or painted plywood.
It's still really something to see these guys work.
No, it is. It's amazing. No volume tank, no reserve air, no emergency backup. Just a little scuba mask that looks like it's from the 1950s and some kind of air hose. God only knows what the pressure rating is or what it's even meant for. It's certainly not meant for breathing air.
The hookah equipment may be primitive, but these divers work at depths of well over 30 meters. Toto doesn't have charts or GPS, but he's a master of using familiar rock formations to guide him to the wreck.
Man, watching that guy swim around the bottom was something else. It's shocking when you look at the regulations and the rules that we have to follow for diving. To see how they dive here, it's just such an eye-opener.
Toto's search covers a lot of ground. He quickly swims ahead of the team, unencumbered by heavy tanks and equipment.
I'll try and get him to slow down. Personally, I just think this is a big rock. I think we should go back to where we were.
The search seems to be going around in circles. Just as they're ready to give up, Toto finds what he's looking for.
Okay, well, I got a giant piece of flat something that looks a lot like steel. Over. You might want to take a look at this. Clearly is a shipwreck.
Toto was right. The team searched for evidence to confirm that the wreckage is from a submarine. It's in the area where the row below and flyer disappeared. The amount of coral growing on the wreck suggests this could be a match for a ship sunk in the 1940s. Mike takes a closer look to see if the steel could be deck or hull plating.
First of all, look at this piece of plate right here. I don't know if you can get in close enough to see, but it does look like a sheet of steel. Do you see our guy up there? He's got a piece of wire rope, I think.
The rope appears to be attached to more wreckage.
Warren, if you come in here, you can see it's wire rope.
Storms can rip a wreck apart long after the incident that sunk it, scattering debris over a wide area and making identification difficult. They need to find a distinct piece of wreckage, so Mike signs the shape of a bow, hoping that Toto knows where it is. It appears he does. Mike is satisfied that he has found the bow. They head back to the surface to discuss what they've seen.
What do you think?
I don't think it's a submarine,
Yeah.
or at least not the submarine.
No, I think it's very early vintage iron steel hull, right?
It's hard to say. It's pretty heavy duty though, whatever it is.
It is. I think it's steam era.
Think so?
Yeah, it's that old. It wouldn't have that much coral on it otherwise. Current was just starting to pick up there too. Definitely time to get out of the water.
A large gale is blowing in. The team must hurry back to the safety of the larger support ship. They can't hide their disappointment. Both had hoped the wreck was one of the missing subs.
It's frustrating. I find a lot of times when you get eyewitness accounts, they see something, they've heard a story their whole life, and they automatically associate this object with that story without really being objective about it.
They know that they're looking for two Gato-class subs, the U.S. Navy's war horses of the Pacific. Former U.S. Navy Lieutenant Tom Kimmel has a close connection to these fighting machines. His uncle was skipper of the Robolo.
I have to familiarize myself with what it's going to look like, but that's the length, that's the width, that's roughly what we're looking for. In terms of underwater fighting machine, Second World War, this Gato class, this was it.
To give you an idea of how significant the activity was of these submarines, 55%, over half of the losses by the Japanese, those losses were incurred by American submarines. There was no force in the war who contributed more to the successful prosecution of the war than the American submarine.
You have a personal connection to the Robolo and have a special interest in seeing it found.
Robolo was commanded by my dad's older brother, and they went out on war patrol. Whether my uncle survived the initial attack of on the Robolo is really unknown. By locating for certainty where Robolo might be, perhaps finally we could get the answer to some of these questions, and no one could be more interested in that than I am, Mike.
The subs were lost off the Philippines, Southeast Asia, a country that comprises over 7,000 islands in the Pacific Ocean. Marlon Acosta, the team's contact in the Philippines, is on Cauron Island. He's chasing a lead about the USS Robolo. A good friend of his may have some relevant information. Dennis Hunter, a diver and former U.S. Navy sailor, has lived here for 20 years. He's in the final stages of terminal cancer and wants to pass on what he knows about the Robolo before it's too late. The Fletchers hope Dennis's lead will help them pinpoint the location of the submarine.
Yeah, I was on the southwestern tip of Palawan Island. We had people coming up reporting different shipwreck sites and things like that. But somebody came up with a sketch of the Robalo, and we weren't looking for submarines or anything, so I just stored the information as always. The sketch the guy gave us, it says the Robalo, but he misspelled it.
Yeah, that's a Robalo.
And the hull number's incorrect. It shows it at a pretty good depth.
A fisherman selling information to Hunter drew this sketch to show where he believed the sub was lying. Dennis and the fisherman had kept secret the location in the Balabac Strait because wrecks are prized as rich fishing grounds and valued for salvage and treasure. The team speed toward the site. And Marlon gets news of his friend.
Hey, Marlon.
Yeah, I have a sad news. Very sad. One of my friend, Dennis Hunter, he's passed away.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I'm surprised to hear that he passed so suddenly.
I was really looking forward to meeting him. I'm sure he would have loved to have been here on this trip.
He's a good friend.
Yeah.
He's a very nice friend.
Dennis Hunter spent a life working on the water. He died at just 49. In the wake of his death, the team redoubled their efforts to find the missing subs. Dennis's coordinates provide the team with a search location. They bring in a side-scan sonar to zero in on their target. They tow the torpedo-shaped device behind the boat. Its sound waves pulse out, reflecting off surfaces on the sea floor. They capture a 150-meter area on either side. Hard objects like a sub's metal hull give off a strong echo, whereas flat, soft seabed absorbs more of the sound waves. Gradually, a high-quality image emerges, revealing what lies below. Jim Bradford is an expert in side-scan sonar. A former lieutenant commander, he spent 33 years in the Canadian Navy.
The water may be too deep in some spots. This is a lightweight system that we're carrying here, so we're going to be limited to how deep we can get and how deep we can image. We can get down probably an image comfortably to 200, 250 feet.
This is an extremely challenging location to side-scan. The sea bottom is hard and rocky and dotted with underwater cliffs. A metal object, even a sub, may not stand out on the hard and uneven bottom. They use GPS guidance to create a grid over the general target area, combing the seabed for wreckage. If there is a submarine in this rocky terrain, the side scan will help zero in on its location. It's risky dragging a $45,000 piece of technology through unfamiliar waters, and it's not long before there's an emergency. The seabed has unexpectedly bottomed out, and the sonar is headed straight for a rocky escarpment.
Pull her up! Pull it up! Guys, pull hard! Pull hard! Pull for all your life! Guys, put down the camera and help us, really! Pull it! Come on, guys, help us! What's the altitude? Whoa!
It would take at least a week to get a replacement out to the team. If the side scan gets damaged, the expedition will be off. Then, as quickly as it started, the crisis is over. The ship passes into deeper waters, and the scanner is safe to tow again.
Okay, we can load her back up now, gently. Okay, out slow. What we can do is we can set a line maybe 25 meters further to the west, back the other way, and then try coming in on that.
The sonar reveals the seabed on the screen. A mysterious shape captures their attention.
There's something. That's gotta be it. Yeah. Would you say that's the best thing we've seen yet? No, that's the best thing, definitely.
So we think we have a target. Definitely the best thing we've seen so far. Hopefully we can narrow in a bit of a position, drop a buoy on it, and then we can try and go for a dive.
If you believe the accounts, this target could be the Robolo. It's in the right area, but we can't know for sure until we dive.
The depth is a serious challenge for this dive. This target is sitting on the seabed around 80 meters down. Oxygen can be poisonous when breathed under pressure at such depth, so the Fletchers need to switch gases during the dive. It means they aren't able to use communication-enabled masks. And because of the nitrogen that's building up in their bodies at this depth, they'll have only 25 minutes at the bottom to investigate.
In the distance, in the dark, the perfect shape of a ship is visible. It looks like a vessel on its side.
It's a solid shape covered in coral. We need to get a closer look.
Thick coral encrusts every surface, making positive identification a challenge. As the minutes tick by, they pore over the suspect shape, searching for evidence of the Robolo. 25 minutes passes fast. They head to the surface to share their findings.
It's a beautiful spot, and I can understand how they made the mistake, but it's a big rock. I'm ready to say it's not a sub.
Yeah.
And there isn't one there.
No, I don't think so.
We know we went to the right spot, and what we found was a very large submarine-shaped rock. Hunting for the unknown, whether it's a shipwreck or anything lost, is a lot like playing cards. And at some point, you just got to know when it's time to fold your hand and move on.
The team suffer their second disappointment. The coordinates from Dennis Hunter did not deliver. Without that lead, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. A handful of men escaped the Robolo, but were captured by the Japanese. None of them made it back to reveal where their sub was sunk.
It's really tough because there are conflicting reports on where the ship sank, and it's really hard to figure out which piece of information to use to even begin to conduct a search. And it's really ironic, the fact that the Robolo kind of disappeared into history, along with the few survivors that did make it to shore.
The Fletchers head back to their support boat, ready to shift their investigation to the USS Flyer, the submarine that carried Steve Jacobson's father. Searching for the USS Flyer, the Fletchers turn to Al Jacobson's account of the sub's final moments.
We hit the mine. And of course, I couldn't figure out what was happening. The boat was going right straight down. I was in the water, sucked under. I swam to the surface as fast as I could. "15 people got off the submarine. The submarine Flyer was lost. Tragic situation. Anyway, we swam. I don't know, you'd say, what did you think about, or that? I can't say. All I can say is I repeated the 23rd Psalm so many times that I almost got to be funny, but I did.
Only 8 of the sailors survived the swim to shore. Al Jacobson spent the rest of his life determined to find out about his lost submarine.
Your dad seemed really sure that they had hit a mine. Like, there's absolutely no question in his mind. Well, whatever we find in the wreck, it will clearly tell us what exactly put it on the bottom.
And that was one of the main things he was interested in finding out, and why it would have been so valuable and or interesting for him to find out, hopefully, what we might find out, you know, with some evidence of, you know, was it a mine, and where actually did that mine hit.
Al Jacobson and his fellow survivors left detailed eyewitness accounts of where the Flyer went down, and naval reports indicate the sub's last known coordinates.
The one thing that would stick in my mind, if I was a guy, was water depth. That would absolutely stick in my brain.
Well, and they also said land 18,000 yards ahead, which doesn't make sense on this heading.
Oh, okay, and I think this is all great, but at the end of all of this, do we not agree that we're still talking about the same search area when it comes to side-scan sonar?
Yep.
The two sources reveal an unexpectedly small target area, about 3.5 square kilometers. But even this can take days to search.
We know it's in 41 fathoms according to your...
The seabed here drops to 200 meters, beyond the range of the team's side-scan sonar.
Hey! Are you ready to launch it? Yeah, we're ready to go here now. Okay.
The team scans during daylight and passes the nights on board ship, anchored in the search area. Pirates present a constant danger in the dark isolation of the open seas.
That's why we got our security.
Yeah, pretty weird to think about pirates these days, but it happens.
Oh, for sure. Are we safe? Yes, sir. That's good.
3 guards on rotating shifts, armed with 2 M16s, 2 handguns, and 1 hand grenade, protect the hundreds of thousands of dollars of gear and the 25 souls on board. This scanning technique is like mowing a lawn. Precise to and fro tracks of sonar readings that image the seabed.
You can see the fish is at 24 meters depth at an altitude of 68 meters off the bottom. And this is just an uncluttered sand bottom. We expect it to be completely sandy all the way along.
Suddenly, a large shadow appears on the sonar image.
What is that?
This could be the team's very first look at the USS Flyer.
Well, that particular object measures approximately 90 meters in length, is about 8 meters across, and if you look at that shadow that you see sticking out there. What
Oh
does that
my
look like?
gosh, that is amazing. That looks awfully like a submarine to me. Is that real?
Yeah, that's pretty much.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
let me be the first.
This is fantastic.
Well, and it's amazing to really see the conning tower standing up like that on a submarine. We've dove a lot of submarines that had never been dove before, and a lot of times the conning tower would be broken away because it wasn't really part of the pressure hull.
Unbelievable. I am so thrilled, I can't tell you.
I mean, it looks like a submarine, but is it the Flyer? The only way to know is to dive down there. We'll step.
Yeah, and there's so much that my father was interested in being able to see on the sub as you go around it. I mean, the thing that he always talked about was trying to identify where and if it was a mine that they hit. Was it on the starboard side?
The Fletchers have their target.
We can see a very distinctive side scan image. It's the right shape, the right dimension. If it's a Gato-class submarine, in my mind, it's going to be the Flyer. The big problem is this area is really known for nasty currents, and it's deep. It's really close to 100 meters to the bottom, and that's as deep as I've ever dove. It's right up there with the limits of our training.
The target spotted on the sonar is 100 meters down, but once they're there, Mike and Warren will have only 12 minutes to explore it. Deep dives like this push the limits of the human body. They each carry 4 tanks for the complex mixture of gases they need to breathe at different pressures. At these depths, they are at risk of oxygen poisoning and nitrogen buildup. So they each carry 90 kilograms of gas on their backs as they fight strong currents to reach the bottom. They experience vice-like pressure, 10 kilograms of force per square centimeter on their bodies. The 2-millimeter neoprene wetsuits are compressed to less than a millimeter. All air is crushed out.
It really takes a long time to swim down 100 meters. As I get closer and closer to the bottom, I can see this shape forming in front of me.
On deck, Steve Jacobson waits to learn if the shape really is his father's sub. Hunting for a missing World War II submarine, the Fletchers descend to the bottom. A dark shape comes into focus.
Way off in the distance, I can see a shadowy outline. I'm full of that anticipation, thinking this is going to be the Flyer.
Immediately, I recognize the deck gun on the bow of the sub. It's got to be a Gato-class submarine. I can tell just the shape and the dimensions.
My feelings are balanced by the fact that you're essentially in a graveyard and only meters away from the graves of dozens of American sailors. I'm constantly drawn back to the relationship between Steve up above us and his deceased father.
They clearly are trying to identify the sub, but at the same time they're being very careful, recognizing that this is a grave site and it's something to be worked with very carefully as an archaeologist would work with it.
They discover the bow of the submarine is gone, back to the first bulkhead, possibly due to impact on the sea floor. They search deeper inside and find forward torpedo tubes stacked in 2 columns of 3, an exact match with Gato-class submarines. This is an important discovery, strongly suggesting it is the USS Flyer. They move along the sub and note the forward deck gun matches the Flyer's gun placement during her last mission. Then they see why this sub went down. Mike swims up to a massive hole ripped in the sub's side.
We could see a huge implosion point on the starboard side. As soon as I saw that, in my mind, we had found the Flyer.
The starboard side hull damage under the conning tower matches Al Jacobson's eyewitness report of the Flyer's last moments. They want to explore more, but they're out of time for this dive. They begin the slow process of ascent and decompression.
Intact, the gun, the conning tower.
Is it on an angle or pretty flat?
It's almost pulled up right.
Yeah, it's pretty flat.
Is the whole conning tower intact?
Yep, it's all there. Yeah, which is amazing. You don't see that very often. Okay. I only went to the bow for just a second. I had to make it back.
We were trying hard to stay high in the wreck.
Yeah.
We didn't want to go right to the bottom if we could help it.
Right. So the bow was gone, or it was
basically blown right apart. There are pieces of it there, but you can see that it's all blown apart. So
Lauren figured it's gone right to the first bulkhead.
When they came up after the first dive and start to describe some of those characteristics which my father had spoken about, wanting to know about, you know, were there holes in the ship? It started to become more real that, you know, the sub was actually down there. I was trying to, you know, feel what my dad would have felt, you know, had he been here also, and I think he would have been elated. I know that the things that we've talked about that my dad was most interested in were the hatches and whether or not those were open. And in his mind, if they were open, it may have meant that men tried to get out. Right. And if they were closed, it meant maybe they didn't.
I did have a real tough question after the war. I'm not going to give his name, but one of the mother and sister of one of the officers just gave me a real tough time about why I didn't know what happened to him. Or maybe he's still alive, or why did we assume that he's dead? And it went down with it. So it was very tough question to answer.
Well, yeah. I don't think Warren and I have ever investigated a story where there was such a close family emotional tie.
Well, you're seeing one single representative of a lot more people that have a huge vested interest in this. So.
Well, we get the sense of that. We get the sense of that from knowing you now and from the accounts that your father left.
Without the accounts of survivors like Al Jacobson, the flyer would not have been found. To survive, they swam 19 kilometers through treacherous waters to reach land. Using a homemade raft, they island hopped for 5 days in enemy-occupied territory before reaching safety on Bugsuck Island. Only 8 of the men who escaped the sinking survived the journey.
Some were injured. Anyway, we swam. We agreed nobody would help each other. We had another guy. For some reason, he couldn't swim on his stomach. He could only swim on his back, and he couldn't see. Well, we'd swim along, and this one time he got quite a ways from us as a group, so I went over to get him, and I said, Phil, just rest and put your feet on my shoulder, and I'll push you back to it. Oh, God, he fought. He wouldn't think about it. And so we went back to the group, and less than an hour later, I was looking for him, and he was gone. He just swam off to one side and gave up. The big mistake we all made was we took all our clothes off. I took everything but my skivvy underwear off. We, obviously, swimming all day, we all got burned up pretty bad. Finally, when daylight came up, we did see the land, and we decided which island we're going to go to.
After 18 hours of swimming, they hoped to find sleep. They dug holes in the sand for shelter.
Night came, and believe me, that is the worst time of the day there is. You were cold. To try to keep warm, we buried ourselves in the sand, and you just prayed all the time for the daylight to come and get the sun to get you warmed up again. Went to bed. You couldn't sleep. So we tried to build a raft. You can call it a raft. There's a lot of bamboo around. Just for something to hang on to.
The men survived 5 days with virtually no food and water in enemy territory before finding rescue at Brooks Point. Local resistance fighters led them to a radio where they contacted the Navy. A submarine was dispatched to collect them. Al Jacobson had always wondered about the fate of the flyer and the men who died with her. The Fletchers hoped to find some answers for Al's son, Steve. They plan a dive to investigate the sub's escape hatches. Were they open or closed? Despite taking all precautions, the deep dives can still be punishing.
I wonder how many more 300-foot dives I have left. I'm ready to start dialing it back.
Yeah, it's a little bit crazy going that deep, really.
I'm getting to where I can't carry all the gear.
Not getting any younger.
I don't need to be reminded. We're good to go.
The team will once again have only 12 minutes to investigate the sub when they reach their target. A dive line attached to the wreck guides them down. The flyer sank while she was following a Japanese convoy. Her top decks would have been out of the water, with the hatches most likely closed. Normal operating procedure in dangerous waters. Six minutes into their dive, they locate a forward escape hatch. And it's open.
I know that Al Jacobson was really haunted almost by the fate of his fellow crew members, the guys that never made it to the surface, the guys that didn't get out of that sinking submarine. So for Warren and I to find that open hatch, in my mind, answered a lot of those questions.
This is more than just a ship, it's a grave site, and people died defending their country while on board this submarine. These guys were fighting for their lives, and right up until the last second they were trying to get these hatches open and scramble to the surface. And just to think the number of men that must have died on this submarine, it's really a humbling feeling.
The Fletchers have 3 minutes left to explore the sub, looking for evidence that could categorically confirm it as the USS Flyer.
We've discovered submarines in the past, and the Flyer had a bit of a special place in my heart. Just the fact that Steve and his father Al were so adamant about finding the submarine and learning some of the little details about the story really made it rewarding for me to actually go down there and answer some of the questions that they've had for so long.
The sub is in the right place. It's evidently the right class of vessel, and the damage appears to be consistent with what happened to the Flyer, but no name or number is visible. Mike and Warren's 12 minutes of bottom time are up. They have to start the long process of ascent, stopping a dozen times at regular intervals to ensure the excess helium and nitrogen in their bloodstream releases at a safe and controlled rate.
If they're not careful with the decompression time, they can contract what is known as the bends, which can cause have very serious consequences. Death is definitely one of them, but it's characterized by pain in the joints, kind of like a bad case of arthritis initially. Okay, divers are up.
Warren reaches the boat, but struggles to get on board. Something is wrong. Warren Fletcher has just ascended 100 meters and is displaying symptoms of the bends.
I'm feeling a little weirdness in this arm.
Are you okay, Warren?
Just weird, achy.
Mike calls in the ship's medic.
It's 120 over 90. Still in the normal blood pressure.
Breathing oxygen is the primary treatment for Warren's symptoms. Increasing the amount in his system counters the effects of the nitrogen buildup. Warren rests up and is able to join his dad to reveal their discovery to Steve.
Yeah, there you can see what's left.
That's the forward hatch that your dad asked about. What it tells me is if the hatch is open, then at least that portion of the sub flooded. And the men that were trapped in there as it sank would have died quickly.
Okay.
As opposed to the fact that if that hatch were closed, there would be the possibility that air was trapped inside and took those men alive to the bottom, only to have a much slower and agonizing end.
So what would your father be thinking right now?
I'm sure he, would have a flood of thoughts and emotions going through him, both personal and, for his comrades that were lost.
It was amazing to be there with my dad and to be there with Steve, and knowing the relationship that he had with his father. It was really kind of sad for me to think that Steve's dad was so close to surviving to hear that the sub had been found.
It's in exactly the right spot. It's the right style and class of submarine. In my mind, it's a flyer, and to anyone who wants to look at the evidence, they can decide for themselves.
The U.S. Navy confirmed the discovery. The USS Flyer, lost August 13, 1944. Found for the first time by the dive detectives.
I don't know. Yes, I wondered why I was there. And there's no question about that. If I was given the privilege of surviving this, I'm a damn lucky guy to be alive, and I better do something to justify the fact that I'm alive, yes.